to our Innovation Leaders series. I'm Marisa Kopek, the CEO of Lux, and here we highlight innovation leaders that we work with who are doing amazing things so you can learn from the pros. So with that, I would love to introduce Phil Clark from Neurion. Phil, welcome.
Hi, Marisa. Nice to be with you.
Let's start with a little bit about what you do as Chief Technology Officer.
So Norian is a specialty chemicals company. We
Mhm.
actually spun out of AkzoNobel a little over 5 years ago. So we make key ingredients that go into a variety of formulations with our customers across a number of end markets. Those end markets include agriculture and food, home and personal care, paints and coatings, natural resources, which includes oil field. We also have a highly technical platform called Polymer Specialties, where we sell a variety of cross-linkers and initiators so our customers can process and manufacture polymers. And then we have Renewable Fibers organization that is looking at working with pulp and paper manufacturers for bleaching and processing of paper.
Excellent. And as you think about your organization, what are emerging trends you foresee shaping the future of your industry? And how's your organization adapting and thinking about those trends?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, so certainly the regulatory environment, any chemical company is going to be focused on regulatory changes that are going on, and those can be regional. So certainly Europe generally leads with REACH and REACH compliance, but you're seeing US rapidly adopt those. And I think what is emerging is how quickly those trends are being implemented and acted upon, even in cases where there's no obvious replacement. If there's a certain material that's being phased out or is being tightly controlled, it used to be those would happen primarily when a replacement had already been identified. Now you're seeing regulatory changes, even in cases where there's no replacement. And so, so that's certainly a trend that that is impacting how we operate every day and in every part of the world. A couple more trends: machine learning, artificial
Yeah.
intelligence is dramatically changing how we work, how we do. I'm obviously from research and development, so I focus on laboratory and science. It's certainly impacting how we're working, but it also impacts how we can support and how we engage our customers. So that's a sweeping trend. And then sustainability for us is always front and center. So
Right.
sustainability is no longer, and perhaps it never was, a nice to have. This is something where customers, depending on what market we're talking about, certainly in home and personal care, customers are demanding it. It's leading to what type of labels you see on products, and customers are buying those labels. So we need to make sure that our ingredients are enabling those green labels so that customers are getting what they need and what they want.
Awesome. Those are definitely AI is so every it's on the tip of everybody's tongue, and how to use AI and innovation. I think we all know we need to be doing something about it, but figuring out what we're going to do there, I think is really exciting as we think about the next few years.
I saw an interesting quote recently on that. So there's a book called Quantum Supremacy that talks about quantum computing. And one of the quotes in there talks about how these machines, these quantum computers, will not replace chemists, but chemists who use those types of machines will replace chemists that don't. And I think the same thing about artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're still going to need chemists. We're still going to need PhDs, but this is a tool that really is going to advance the science and our ability to apply the insights that we get from looking at our data in a fresh way. That's the key. And so that's how we think about it at Norion,
Yeah, it's an enabler.
for sure.
As you think about your successes, we want to, and obviously, no need to tell me anything confidential,
Mhm.
but what's a particular project or initiative you're super proud of that you worked on recently?
So I've been here for a year, and
Mhm.
just a few weeks ago was my 1 year anniversary, and I came
Happy.
in
That's great.
thinking, thank you, yes, yeah, it's flown by, and so there was two things that I came into the company wanting to work on, and listened to the team here to make sure that this is something that they thought would be impactful. One was machine learning and how we could bring in this into R&D and our technology development. And the other one had to do with biosurfactants and how do we leverage organisms to make new materials, for example, including surfactants, so biosurfactants. And it's really interesting, Marisa. I expected that when I asked people about machine learning, they would say, good luck. There's so much art and experience in what we do that you really are not going to get a lot out of looking at the data in machine learning and artificial intelligence. I was expecting some resistance. And then biosurfactants, I was expecting, oh, this is fantastic. This is absolutely, these are readily biodegradable. We should really work on these. And it was actually the opposite. Okay.
Huh.
So it turns out, biosurfactants have some utility, but they're really not anywhere close to being as good as the materials that they're trying to replace. So that will change. And there's a lot of development going on by a number of companies, including ours. But that's something that that I actually got some resistance here because we have some really great materials and they perform really well. And machine learning has been readily accepted here. And so it's something where people knew that we have all sorts of data. So we even know, we're only a 5-year-old company. We actually leverage really a long history of AkzoNobel. And so we have a lot of data throughout the world, in Europe, in Asia, and the US as well, that we may not be fully leveraging. And so having a machine learning platform that we can get all of our data up to the cloud, that we can start to build models that then become predictive of what we may need. This is particularly important in personal care. So this is where I'm really proud. We have over 40,000 personal care formulations. And once we're able to pull that up into the cloud, you can
Yeah.
start to see insights and how the individual components of a formulation are impacting a given performance factor. And this
Yeah.
is important because, as you know, people want to use sunscreens in different formats, whether it's a cream or whether it's a spray. They want to use personal care products in different ways, whether it's a mousse or a gel. So understanding what needs to change at the component level in a very predictive way allows us to get performance consistency across different formats. And the machine learning has been able to do that in a very efficient way versus just trial and error.
So being a new person in the organization, I know change is hard and driving new initiatives is hard. What are some tips and tricks for fellow innovation leaders based on that experience? What would you say were your secrets to success?
Well, I think I'm a natural collaborator. And so
Mhm.
you have to really ask people, is this something that will solve a problem, in this case, machine learning, that you're having today? And it may be really critical for some groups and not for others. So naturally, you start with the groups where this is a problem that we want to solve. This was not a student body left initiative where everybody must use machine learning. This is a tool. It has utility, certainly in cases where you have a vast amount of data and you want to be able to customize and personalize solutions, which is certainly relevant in home and personal care, relevant in agriculture and food. So that's where we started. And, I sometimes joke, change management, is really important, even when the ideas are really good. And that's sort of a joke because, of course, I think they're really good and this is going to be, but you need to look at it from different angles. And people may look at this and say, I don't have a lot of data. How can I leverage machine learning? So we try to build up use cases and really communicate and allow people to opt in. That was critical. And then what's happening over time is that people are seeing the successes on those use cases. They see that this is a tool that will help them solve a problem that they actually are having. And then you're getting more people that are jumping in and opting in. But we've created that. And then just constant communication. So, you and I spoke shortly before a board meeting that I presented at in July. It was really helpful to get your perspective on how you communicate with your board. That was also helpful. So we started right away at my board presentation talking about machine learning and demonstrating how this is going to impact how we're doing research and development and how it's going to benefit our customers, all the
Right.
way through virtual prototyping. So to me, it's just a bit change management 101, But the thing about that is change management is constantly changing because of the environment, because of the needs that the company has.
And what I think is important for folks listening and watching to know is that you're not talking about a couple people on your team. When you say people, this is a large scale change management effort.
That's right. We have over 600 people within our laboratory, and we have additional resources that are actually out in the field that are technical sales. And this will have utility there. So you have that number of people, and then you're very diverse with respect to geographic and culture. So that's another part. And
Yeah.
we're diverse with respect to our industries. And so agriculture and food all the way to oil and gas. These are different cultures even within those segments. So you constantly just have to communicate. I think the opt-in and really demonstrating that we were listening, to prioritize which use cases we wanted to start with was super helpful.
And what's the best way to communicate?
Yeah, good question. To me, verbally in talking to people, I use webcasts. I do town halls when I travel. I travel quite a bit. Seeing people in person has been super important. Even if it's through virtual, seeing people's expression on
Yeah.
when they're understanding, where they may be still questioning the value proposition has been really impactful. And so to me, that's the best way. And then you just follow up and reinforce through written, depending on the culture. As you know, coming back, we talked before the call just from Japan. Certainly in Asia, it's helpful to provide this in writing in addition to the verbal communication to just make sure that the message is being understood. And then listening, feeding back where there still may be some gaps. Machine learning is something that's still new to a number of us. It's a rapidly developing field. And so it's often we start off with what do we mean by machine learning? What is machine learning? And some people want to reduce it and say, well, it's a design of experiments on steroids, right? Well, it's not really. It's more of a smart DOE, say, for design of experiments DOE, is how do you learn? And you can think about how you learn as a human, as an individual. You segment out certain environments. But ultimately, machine learning is about curve fitting. It's really advanced curve fitting across a very large set of dimensions that describe your data. So that to me, that's the fascinating part, but it's something that we're all still learning about and then understanding how we bring that capability to solve problems, both internally, but then also for our customers.
Yeah, it's like a master class you're giving on machine learning. All right, let's talk about let's move over to, well, we sort of have been talking about leadership, the cross-functional collaboration and the different perspectives that you've considered. You say and you are an amazing collaborator, but how did you get to be an amazing collaborator? That's a skill. What are things you did to develop yourself, and what are things you remind yourself to do? Like, what are the practices of being a fantastic collaborator?
A big one for me is the methodology, objectives and key results,
Mm-hmm.
which ironically, Marisa, I have not brought into Norian yet. Okay, this is something I did in a previous role
Mm-hmm.
at 3M, which is a very collaborative and innovative company. But certainly that's just one company that uses objectives and key results. To me, objectives and key results, if those of you who are listening are not familiar with it, very simple. It's really coming down to what are the critical things that we need to be doing as an organization. That's your objective. In general, on the objective, you don't have any numbers, by the way. There's no numbers, there's no quantifiable number that you put in the objective. These are qualitative, aspirational objectives. Why you get up in the morning, what are the problems that you really think are compelling for you to be solving? And these are generally the types of objectives that are keeping you up at night. Okay, so the things that are going well, you do not need to be using OKRs. It's the ones that maybe are falling through things or it's your North Star, the things that you just absolutely need to get done. over some time period, typically a quarter. Okay. And then the key results are what are the 3 to 5 things that if you deliver, you will meet your objective. That's the goal. Now, the key results are where you put all your numbers. Those need to be quantifiable. So if you want to be first in mind to a customer, then you need to be seeing your net promoter score, for example, go from X to Y. And then that would be an indication that your customers are putting you in first in mind. They're recommending you. Those are the kinds of things. To me, the conversation, there's a little bit of a discussion there around embrace the mess. Because when you're first putting in OKRs in place, the discussion, and it's a cross-functional discussion with cross-functional teams, you're constantly talking about what is the most important thing that you should be doing now. And that would be your 3 to 5 OKRs as an organization. And you think about, we're a $6 billion company. So at the C-suite level, you would expect to only have maybe 5 sets of objectives and key results, or OKRs. And for those of you who want to learn more, there's a great book, a bit of the first book that everybody starts to read when they learn about this is Measure What Matters by John Doerr. And it's a great book, and it's a great audio book. And if you need additional convincing, Bono from U2, the lead singer from U2, actually reads a part in the audiobook about how OKRs through the Gates Foundation really changed his One initiative in Africa. So to me, it's sort of like, don't think of this as a business process. Think of this as a lifestyle, or how you can really realize your purpose. That to me is a key part of bringing groups together, that gets change management as part of the discussion right out. And it's about what you're going to do as much as about what you're not going to do right now. That can
Right.
be really galvanizing for the team.
Absolutely. It's the deselection that's always the hardest, not the
Right.
selection. All right. How do you approach critical decision making? I think for C-level execs, you think back in business over the last 50 or 60 years, this is the hardest time to be a CEO and driving an organization. It's not just about growth anymore. We also have to save the planet, and the future is so all the ways we used to make decisions on the right projects and the right things. Those financial formulas don't really work anymore. The decision-making criteria is under disruption. And so how do you approach critical decision making? And as you look at the future and where you should be placing your bets, how are you thinking about it?
A few things on decision making. Sometimes it's not just making that decision, it's the stickiness of that decision, right? That can be challenging. So, I mentioned previously, that I had experience at 3M and even at Norion. There's a celebration, certainly within the R&D community, where if a project is decided to be stopped, there's an element where it's still worked on, underground a bit.
Yeah.
And so some companies will have a mechanism to do that, 15% time. There's other companies, 20% time. And so it's really important, if you want to be driving a decision such that people with their mind share have moved on from a program that has been no longer prioritized, that it needs to be sticky. Okay. And so how I feel like you get to decisions that will drive future behavior is you really lay out what went into making that decision. And so there's an element, again, there's another maybe tip or trick that I use that I think can be really impactful. And that's Amazon's approach. They have a narrative, they're very public and not using, say, PowerPoint in meetings. Instead, they will write up to a 6-page narrative. And then everyone will come together and they silently read that narrative and then have a discussion. And everyone is quite literally on the same page, right? For example, in that particular case. So I think that can be impactful. What they also have done as part of that process is they do something they call FAQs, frequently asked questions. And they identify what are the questions that they think external stakeholders should be asking and what questions are they asking of themselves. And they publish those. along with the answers. To me, I've done this within product development because it's a great way to get everything on the table so that you clearly are identifying what are the questions and the answers. And now you're immediately elevating the discussion. To me, this gets to decision making because you can really say, well, why would we work on this product if it's only, this much revenue or this gross margin, or it's only relevant to one particular customer? People are coming in with those questions. And I feel like as a stakeholder, you're not able to move past almost until those questions have been answered. I mean, those are the questions that you've had, and it's a great way to unlock you from waiting to hear the answer to your question before you're ready to actually participate. To me, this is critical in decision making. And I've written a few things on LinkedIn about this as a way to just get much more transparent, much more on teams collaborating. I use an example of rugby compared to NFL football. And the significance there is, if you know much about these sports, most people don't know much about rugby, is that you have an official that's talking to the players before they call a penalty. So they'll say, well, you're offsides. If you don't get back on sides, I'm going to call a penalty. If you compare that to NFL football, they don't talk to you. They immediately just throw the penalty. And that's why the game is so slow. One of the reasons why the game is slow. And to me, how I like to lead is like to lead much more like a rugby official than I do like an NFL referee. And what that really is signifying is that you have a role, no matter what your position is in the company, all the way to the CEO. You have a role, of course, in delivering the objectives, even at the team level. And so this invites much more transparent and collaborative conversation. Once you do that, when you make a decision, you're all on the same page. And so the stickiness of that decision is clear. And then you know next time what you need to do in order to have a different outcome. And it could be present already in those FAQs that are driving. So to me, that's a great trick to use. And if people want to learn more, there's also a good book for that called Working Backwards. That's great. That's written by two former executives from Amazon.
Awesome. And I just don't think I can get rid of my PowerPoint
No,
completely.
either can I. Either can I. No, I use it all the time.
Let's switch gears a little. We have been partners for a long time, even though you've only been at Nourion for a year. You've been
Mhm.
working with Lux for several years.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk about what the value of Lux is to you and how it's impacted your role and career.
So both in my former job or company and then now, one of the things is two ways that we use this now. One is if we pick a topic, I mentioned biosurfactants earlier, and I mentioned machine learning. We have engaged experts at Lux on both of those topics, even during my time at Nourion. And this is a great way because we spend a lot of time looking at biosurfactants and surveying the market and understanding startups in this area and the like. So we come into this with a bit of an organic assessment. And then we said, wait a second, we can engage Lux on this. And so we reached out to Kristen Marshall, who helped us really understand what the landscape is. And she has written a report. And in some cases, it validates what our assessment was. And in some cases, it offers new insights and perspective. So I think Lux provides really an excellent approach to be able to bring our thoughts together along with what you're seeing in the market with other companies and really help us shape up and confirm, which is helpful because sometimes when you work within a company, you always feel like, well, you need an external opinion because you want to
Yeah,
guard against groupthink within a company.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
that Lux plays a huge role for us there.
yeah.
And then I did the same thing with machine learning. Now, machine learning, as we talked about, is still developing. Anthony Escarvo from Lux was super helpful with me just a week ago and kind of educating me a bit on how I should think about machine learning. He just is so experienced in that area that was helpful. And then, so those are two examples on a project level where it's useful. The other one is what you've introduced with the executive membership. So I, as you know, work closely with Naveen
Mhm.
Naveen is super valuable to me as an executive partner. We talk about change management. Naveen gives me the resilience that I need,
Oh,
when I'm working on an issue where I'm feeling like I'm the only one who's kind of voicing this concern. Naveen, just his experience with other executive leaders saying, "Hey, Phil, this is a challenge that other members are seeing, so keep at it in a way. And here's some additional tools and articles and references that you can use to address the current challenge that you have within change management." So think about, the role of electrification in vehicles. So, largely, um, this company had in the past has been focused on fossil fuel materials, and oil and gas has been a big market. So as we shift, well, what is really the change in electrification, right? You see a lot in the headlines where General Motors, for example, is having some challenges. Where is Tesla in this? I drive a Tesla, so I'm all in on electrification. Love electric vehicles, but you're bringing along people, who are used to, combustion engines and don't understand why you would ever buy an electric car if it can't go 500 miles. Why would you do that? And you have to remind people, how often do you travel 500 miles on a given day? I mean, there's examples, but it's not really how you commute. And so Naveen has been really helpful to me to talk about. He sent me a number of articles around sustainable air fuels, for example, in aerospace and the transition that's happening there. He's been just a great collaborator in change management and gives me resources that I can then go and use to kind of convince, anyone who may be still, um, questioning some of the key trends.
that's awesome. So thank you very much for that feedback. And it's a privilege to serve you. We enjoy working with you so much. So the feeling is definitely mutual. All right, let's talk about aspiring leaders. So, folks who someday want to have your job. What would be the sage advice you'd give them in terms of folks who eventually want to do what you're doing?
I think, you have to engage externally. So for me, I do that a few different ways, including Lux. So the executive membership that you brought into the company, I think is a great way for people to engage. And that's not just because we're meeting. Okay. I really think it's a great way to engage. And it's a relatively easy way for people to engage. The other ways that I am personally doing are through, external councils. So there's a number of examples. Conference Board has councils that I think are excellent. And then you have Vistage that are generally for smaller companies, perhaps. But anything that gets you on boards and in councils working with other companies. And the companies should be different from you because these are generally not competitive. You don't want to be having competitive discussions, right? But there's a lot that can be gained. I'm on councils where Target, FedEx, AARP, Kimberly-Clark, there's a number, and these are fantastic leaders that you can then collaborate with. So, for example, I saw at the Lux Forum that you had in Chicago, maybe 6 months ago,
Yeah,
that kind of flying by, but you had Clorox there, you had Land O'Lakes. These are great ways for you to collaborate with similar functions in other companies. And what's really been amazing for me in the last 5 or so years that I've been doing this is how collaborative people are and how
right.
we're all struggling with, some of the questions that you've asked. We all struggle with those. And we come from different environments and people want to share and they want to collaborate. That to me is critical. And I get, especially in my field, that people can be introverts and you think, well, how am I going to go do that? That's why I think Lux can be really useful because that's a non-threatening way to quickly get access to, connections with other leaders. So Naveen and other people at Lux have introduced me to people I didn't know. I never would have met certain people from Clorox or Land O'Lakes without the Lux Forum, which
Right.
was useful. And that's building up your network. Really important to have an external network when you're a change agent, because this is generally where you need to be getting out of the four walls that you may be in in order to continue to be inspired and come up with different perspectives and different approaches.
That's great advice. So as we wrap up, is there anything I should have asked that I didn't in terms of talking to you around innovation leadership?
I don't think so, Marisa. I mean, I think, the way people should look at these types of profiles in a way is there's individual perspectives and then there are corporate perspectives, and they blend, right? So there's individual challenges. How do you bring in change? How do you make decisions? And then external corporate, where what are the trends that you're operating on? Where do you need to change? How is the environment shaping what it's like to work at a particular company on a particular challenge every day? I think you covered it. So that's the key. And then yeah, there's a number of other people that I would recommend you talk to as part of your profile. There's some really good, great CTOs that I've come across recently that I'd be happy to recommend.
Awesome. So with that, thank you for watching and listening. I really appreciate your time and your advice. It's been incredible. And with that, let's go change the world. Bye-bye.
Excellent. Thanks, Marisa.